Chief of an Internet retailer, and I'll be moderating today's discussion. We'll be talking about business-to-business e-commerce, that is, manufacturers, distributors, and wholesalers creating websites where their customers can view products and place orders. It's a fast-growing way of doing business and one that's very different from how these companies have operated in the past. We'll be digging into some of the issues that arise as B2B companies go online, show several examples of how they're responding. That will include drawing on many of the examples in Internet Retailer's newly published guide to B2B e-commerce. Our speakers will be Paul Demery, Internet Retailer's managing editor of B2B e-commerce and the editor of the new guide. Mark Brohan, Vice President of Research at Internet Retailer, who played a big role in bringing out our first guide to B2B e-commerce. And Bob Egner, Vice President of Product Management at EpiServer, a content management software provider and sponsor of today's webinar. You can ask questions at any time using the message box on your screen, and we'll take them at the end, and you will all get an email in the next couple of days giving instructions on how to obtain a copy of today's slides. So let's begin. We believe B2B commerce in the United States is a $1 trillion market. That's the number prominent analysts at Gartner and Forrester have agreed on. But the truth is no one really knows because B2B commerce has developed more rapidly than the mechanisms for tracking it. The U.S. Department of Commerce does report e-commerce sales in the manufacturing and wholesaling industry, but its definition of e-commerce includes EDI, electronic data interchange, the electronic exchange of documents such as purchase orders, invoices, and shipping notices in standardized formats. That's EDI, of course, predates the Internet becoming a mass phenomenon. And what we're talking about in B2B e-commerce is different. What we do see is that e-commerce, as the Commerce Department defines it, has increased dramatically in manufacturing in the past decade and significantly in wholesaling. Some of that, no doubt, has to do with transactions moving from EDI to transactional websites. And we see clear evidence of the growth of B2B e-commerce in a series of surveys that Forrester Research has conducted in the last year or so in conjunction with Internet Retailer. We see both B2B buyers and sellers saying they're seeing growth in e-commerce and responding to it. Sellers, for example, are investing more in B2B e-commerce technology, as this slide demonstrates. These sellers, manufacturers, wholesalers, and distributors expect a growing percentage of their customers to be buying from their e-commerce websites in the years ahead. In fact, 48% think half or more of their customers will be buying online within the next 3 years. Our surveys of B2B buyers show the same trend. 30% of the people we surveyed who buy for companies, government agencies, and educational institutions say they already make more than half of their purchases online, and 56% expect that will be true by 2017. Here at Internet Retailer, we've been hearing progressively more about businesses buying more online, just as consumers do, and that led us to start a weekly newsletter in January that focuses exclusively on B2B e-commerce. That newsletter is free, and you can sign up for it at internetretailer.com. Paul Demery heads up that newsletter, and the stories he and others on our team have written throughout 2014 provided a big part of the basis for our next B2B project, our first ever guide to B2B e-commerce. That guide came out this month, and Paul and Mark will be discussing some of the most significant findings from it. At the heart of the B2B guide are profiles of 64 companies that are selling online to business customers. As you can see, the 64 includes a mix of manufacturers, distributors, and wholesalers. And between them, they're confronting many of the most important challenges that face B2B sellers as they go online. And Paul will provide some of the examples in his remarks. The guide also includes a broad overview of B2B e-commerce, case studies, expert commentary, a look at online procurement networks, which Mark will talk about today, and information on 400 technology vendors and service providers to B2B e-commerce companies. We can't cover all of this in today's presentation, but Paul and Mark will touch on several of the most important insights in the B2B guide. After they speak, Bob Egner of EpiServer will provide his commentary on B2B e-commerce, and then we'll take your questions. Remember, you can ask questions at any time, and you will all get an email within 2 days explaining how you can get a copy of today's slides. And now I will turn the mic over to Paul Demery, Managing Editor of B2B e-commerce at Internet Retailer.
Thank you, Don, and welcome, everyone. As Don noted, B2B e-commerce presents both big challenges and opportunities for companies. And now I'd like to talk about some of the companies we've covered in the guide to B2B e-commerce. I'll divide the companies into 4 general areas related to e-commerce site operations. First is website design. Second, mobile commerce. Third, keeping the bean counter happy, or in other words, getting the most return on e-commerce investments. And fourth, in what is a crucial and often touchy topic for many companies, keeping sales reps in the game and bringing more value to their relationships with their customers. For a first look at a B2B web design, here's the home page of Edmund Optics, a manufacturer of more than 20,000 lenses and other optics, imaging, and photonics products for several industries, including electronics, pharmaceutical, semiconductor, biomedical, and military. I came across Edmund Optics at a recent B2B conference and quickly became impressed with how it presents products and related information to customers online. As you can see by the navigation links just above and below the main image of new products, it lets site visitors click tabs to enter sections of product pages where they can view product details and make purchases, or they can click into technical resources, which include video demonstrations on how to use and care for lenses, a section on capabilities, which covers the latest features of products and how they're used in different industries. And of course, there are links to click for customer support through telephone, email, live chat, or a self-service help section. Now this page shows the level of detail that a product specialist or engineer would need to check before purchasing a particular imaging lens. A buyer has many options. As you can see in the top right section of the page, the buyer can click the arrows under the product image to see multiple views of individual lenses. She can click to open and save a PDF file of the product page, or click to instantly share it through email or social media networks. And before clicking to buy a lens, the customer can click among several links to view related accessories, view technical diagrams, and lists of product specifications. And for another look at product details, now this technical specifications page goes into deep details related to things like lens diameter and filter threads. But the information Edmund provides isn't all cut and dry, as we'll see on the next slide. Under a Learn More link, customers can view informative videos on overall or specific operations of an imaging system. All of these pages we viewed here have been public content available to any visitor to edmundoptics.com. But back on the home page, there was a link for account holders to log in to view content and pricing personalized according to their interests and their contract terms. Now, for many B2B buyers, purchasing from an e-commerce site via desktop or laptop may not offer the flexibility they need to order products whenever and wherever they want. So companies like Edmund Optics are also engaging their customers through mobile optimized sites and mobile apps. Pictured here is the home page of Edmund's mobile site, which, like its desktop site, lets visitors easily click to view countless product descriptions, product and educational videos, tools for choosing the right lens or other product, and files of instructions for help in choosing and using Edmund's products. Now, a lot of companies know about W.W. Grainger Incorporated, the distributor of maintenance, repair, and operations tools and equipment that companies use to manage their facilities, and its expertise in selling via e-commerce. Grainger has been a leader in e-commerce for more than a decade, with online sales of more than $3 billion, accounting for about a third of its total sales of more than $9 billion. Now Grainger is extending its online expertise into the mobile arena, where its mobile app, launched 2 years ago, already accounts for more than $20 million in annual sales, about 40% of its total mobile sales of about $59 million. Now, like the homepage of Edmund Optics' mobile site, Grainger's app welcomes visitors with a simple, easy-to-use interface. Simple, but with several links that take customers wherever they need to go. Browse among product categories, check order history, scan product barcodes to quickly search for a particular item, or even enter a live chat session with a product photo sent to a customer service rep for assistance. Here we see how, on this next slide, we see how Grainger's mobile app clearly lays out basic information and images of door locks and door knob locks, providing the product prices and number of items in stock with links to get more information. Since 2012, when Grainger launched its first mobile app, about 500,000 B2B buyers have downloaded a version of a Grainger app, the company says. Now for another look at mobile, here's the mobile site of Quill.com, the distributor of office products and related supplies. Its homepage on the left displays daily deals, shown here as specials on tablet computers, and also lets customers quickly browse to its main product categories like cleaning and janitorial supplies. On the right, we see a page for a customer who was logged into their account, revealing such options as the ability to reorder products purchased in the past, check order status, and view products on a favorites list. Now, as B2B companies invest in e-commerce and mobile commerce systems, they face big questions about what technology to choose and how to deploy it. The cost of acquiring e-commerce systems and the services needed to deploy them can range widely by a company's transaction volume, its number of suppliers, products, and customers. Then there's the cost of integrating the customer-facing front-end e-commerce site with a company's enterprise software for managing such things as inventory stocks and financial records, along with customer orders. Peter Sheldon, a technology analyst at Forrester Research, says companies can expect to pay anywhere from $200,000 to several $1 million to acquire e-commerce technology capable of managing B2B customer relationships, including such features as personalized content and product descriptions and pricing based on a B2B customer's contract terms. In addition, it can cost another $300,000 or more to integrate e-commerce technology with a company's enterprise software, Sheldon says. To get a good return on investment on their e-commerce technology, experienced online B2B companies find what works in attracting visitors to their sites and converting them to buyers. One example is the Wasserstrom company. It's a distributor of restaurant and kitchen supplies and equipment. A family-owned company, Wasserstrom, competes with AmazonSupply.com as well as throngs of other distributors. And one way it stands out is by using software that analyzes the search terms that online customers use to search for products that they go on to purchase, and then displaying products in a way that makes it easier to find products according to those terms. For example, when it discovered that many buyers were searching for and buying whiskey glasses based on the amount of whiskey the glasses can hold, it designed product pages with sliders that let customers quickly call up lists of products based on such terms as volume capacity and height of glasses. Site visitors who use these tools convert to buyers at a much higher rate than visitors who don't use the tools, Vice President of E-commerce Dale Edmonds says. Now, to get a good return on investment, the next section here we're getting into on the how to keep the sales reps in the game. This company, Ameripride Services, which is another family-owned company, has been providing employee uniforms and other textile products and laundry services to businesses for 125 years. As you can see on their webpage here, customers can view invoices, check delivery schedules, and make payments on due invoices for items ordered through sales reps. In the top right corner, there's a link to Ameripride's online store where customers can browse among product images, place items into a shopping cart, and click to buy. Now, this slide shows further details on how Ameripride customers can search for and view invoice data, including the order date, payment due date, and if and when invoices were paid. Customers can also export the data to PDF or Excel files. And like the customer portal homepage and the online store, these features let customers use self-service to manage their purchasing and payment activity without having to rely on sales reps. But that doesn't mean that Ameripride's sales reps are in less demand. As its customers engage in more self-service, Ameriprise sales reps and other employees have been freed up to provide more value-added services, says Vice President of Marketing and Customer Operations, Andrew Steiner, who is a fourth-generation member of Ameriprise owning family. As customers check routine things like order status, it frees up sales reps to spend more time on the more complex contracts. Steiner notes, for example, that small convenience stores can usually manage their own purchasing and most of their own account management online for their relatively small staffs and limited use of Ameriprise products. So that frees up Ameriprise sales reps to spend more time working on more complex orders of, say, a restaurant chain, which typically needs multiple items like tablecloths and uniforms for wait staff and cooking staff that can fluctuate widely according to levels of business volume. And while a typical convenience store might be a $35 a week contract, Steiner says, sales reps make better use of their time tending to the typical $600 a week restaurant chain contract. So as he says, a much better use of his sales reps' times. This all comes down to using e-commerce and employees to better serve customers according to their needs, while also focusing on revenue opportunities. Well, that's it for my presentation here, and now I'd like to hand things over to my colleague and our Vice President of Research, Mark Brohan, for a rundown of other B2B e-commerce. It's all yours, Mark.
Thanks, Paul. We've been crisscrossing the country and talking with wholesalers and distributors and manufacturers, and as Don pointed out, we've been conducting our own research on B2B e-commerce in conjunction with Forrester Research, and it's very apparent, at least to me, that B2B e-commerce is becoming mainstream and will become more mainstream. Now, if you ask these guys, why are you doing this, then pretty high up on the priority list with the folks we talk to is, I want to do a better job of automating my procurement process. So that's been one of the key priorities that companies tell us as to one of the chief reasons they're doing B2B and e-commerce. So it's my pleasure to spend the next several minutes drawing some conclusions and offering some perspective on some key takeaways on web procurement we learned while putting together the guide to B2B e-commerce. So let's get started. Just quickly, I think we need to understand the past to understand the future. My colleague Paul and I remember the first iteration of B2B e-commerce, and we covered it fairly extensively about a decade ago. So if you look at what happened about a dozen years ago, more than a decade ago, when companies and industries first began looking at web-based platforms to link buyers and sellers, the trend gave way to the formation of hundreds, if not thousands, of industry exchanges or third-party networks. You can still click on Google today, type in third-party exchange, B2B exchange, and you'll see these press releases and sometimes stories from circa 1999 talking all about how these things are going to revolutionize procurement and business exchanging and that type of thing. But the fact of the matter is, it was well before its time. Most exchanges failed to make it off the ground, or they crashed and burned after the dot-com investment meltdown of around 2000. So my first takeaway here is this, and why I bring up the ancient past. The concept was sound, but back then, B2B e-commerce was still in its infancy, expensive, and difficult to deploy. Okay, so why did it blow up? Because many companies, even Fortune 500 companies with big computer systems and a big, large technology workforce, they still operated their mainframe legacy systems with enterprise resource planning, supply chain management, procurement, and other key back-end systems that were siloed. They were warehouses. They were not integrated. In fact, it was very difficult back then to integrate to even first-generation B2B e-commerce platforms. So the technology was not there. The technology was not ready. But that was only part of the problem. The other part of the problem of why these exchanges kind of came and went like the dinosaur very quickly in the meltdown is because it was a chicken-egg question. The exchanges wanted sellers and buyers wanted sellers to have more buyers, and there really wasn't a critical mass that either side could achieve, so there wasn't enough transaction volume between trading partners to go around. One of the reasons why a lot of these were kind of one-hit wonders all these many years ago. But probably the biggest thing is that all of this was still so new. The technology was unproved. So frankly, CFOs and procurement managers had lots of questions about the upfront cost of this, but the questions on their return on investment largely went unanswered because, frankly, the answers were not there. Okay, so what's changed? So you fast forward 10 years, even a dozen years, and what was once a good idea these days is now a practical idea as well. That's because B2B e-commerce and web-based procurement are becoming mainstream. More companies are expressing a renewed interest in using B2B electronic networks to process transactions, link to key vendors, distributors, and other interested parties and serious parties. What else changed? In more than a dozen years, e-commerce technology is affordable, it's ubiquitous, and there's a lot of B2B e-commerce networking that takes place in cloud computing. All of that is now affordable, it's now mainstream, it's now practical. The bottom line is that makes it much easier these days for purchasing managers at companies of varying size to conduct more procurement and other business over the internet. So as one analyst told me for a story I did for our guide, which is, why is this becoming mainstream? Because B2B networking is becoming mainstream because companies are telling their vendors, they're telling their suppliers, they're telling the world, I want to do more business online. And, B2C, of course, had a big influence on this. The same folks who are the purchasing managers, the CFO, the procurement directors at big and small companies, these are the same folks who shop online. And they want a good experience, they want a fast transaction, they want content, they want social media, they want to do it on the mobile web, they want to do it on tablets, they want to do it on smartphones, because that's how we shop today on the B2B side, or on the B2C side. My final takeaway for this slide is that had a hugely heavy influence on what's driving, the implementation of more B2B and, frankly, kind of web procurement. Another big factor of why companies are doing more web procurement and e-commerce in general, because these days cloud computing, technology, and better integration means that purchasing managers have access to data, and boy, do they have access to data, and then lots of it. Even relatively basic e-commerce platforms today that link to back-end supply chains and ERP systems, today those very same platforms let purchasing managers and procurement officers and other interested parties who are linked to these platforms, it lets them analyze data. You can look at and drill down and look and analyze inventory on an ongoing real-time basis. You can look at, how your price comparison data is kind of chalking up real-time, per minute, per second. You can run analytics and see what the trend has been for an hour, a month, a week. All of that is now giving procurement managers much more access to data. Additionally, a lot of these platforms give access to order status and contract compliance. So there is much more information on dashboards on these platforms that let procurement directors do B2B e-commerce much easier today than ever before. And as you go up the technology food chain, as these platforms, these networks head into the higher end range, they get highly specialized. And it gets into details and data for doing contract negotiations and preset pricing and what discounts apply to the master contract, these types of things. So these days, agents have access to data to manage highly specialized and conduct very key contract negotiations. In short, B2B commerce networks are becoming utilized because they give procurement managers more ways to collect and analyze purchasing data and, frankly, to control spending. That's why they're doing it. So as one analyst told me for the story I just did, purchasing managers now more than ever are accountable for controlling spending at their company and knowing exactly how suppliers and services are being purchased, by whom, and by what amount. So how does web procurement look today? Web-based procurement applications and business networks, in concert with cloud technology, are leading a charge of enterprise technology development, if you will, that's connecting business to supply chain and to a wider universe of trading partners. So my next couple of slides here will kind of emphasize a couple of numbers, from some of the research analysts we talked to kind of put more of this into perspective. So for instance, it is indeed wrapping up, it being web procurement, B2B networking. Very influential research company out there in suburban Boston called Ardent Partners. They they survey procurement individuals. They keep kind of a close eye on procurement e-commerce trends, and they increased that next year, according to a September survey of 1,000 companies, 1,000 procurement managers. They see more networking e-commerce in general going up by about 15%. Now that's a kind of good growth rate, but you fast forward 2 years after that, 2017, that 15% goes to 40%, and that is momentum, which I'll talk about in my next slide. So frankly, momentum for B2B networks is building. Going back to the same survey of 1,000 procurement managers from Ardent that we talked to, today 55% of their survey respondents, the guys that do, the ladies that do, the folks that do, the procurement, the buying of supplies, for their company, they say 55% say that this is going to become a major way they're going to connect with trading partners. It's going to be a major platforming network, if you will. So also, they agree on some of the basic, which is that 73% agree that B2B is beneficial to buyers and sellers. 73% actually say that business e-commerce networks foster more direct collaboration because you can set the terms, you can analyze the data, you can go out to your sellers, wholesalers network with much more specific information, and that is a way to foster a whole new world of collaboration that was not there 12 years ago. And frankly, 54% of companies say that networks are a key source of new business for suppliers. That's a big driver. As I alluded to, B2C and how these purchasing managers shop online had a big influence on what's happening with pushing web procurement and B2B networking forward. Why is that? Because 49% of the folks in the survey say that the social media is going to play a big role in what they'll do with B2B network and e-commerce going forward. Quick example of that. A couple years ago, Grainger, who Paul alluded to in his presentation, they had virtually no social media department. And then inside the course of about 6 months to 9 months, they had 6 full-time staffers devoted to this and growing. And I thought it was kind of interesting for an MRO company, so I asked them, why is that, for a story I was doing? And they said quite simply, because this is how our procurement managers are exchanging data. This is what they're doing to talk to their peers, talk to their collaborators. In other words, social media is becoming mainstream in B2B, if as or much so as it is in B2C. So the fact of the matter is that this will be heavily influenced by social media, and my next slide is going to show just a few numbers on this from Forrester. Okay, so the chart I'd like to show here is the chart that's not yet available, and Don alluded to this, which is some of the analysts like Forrester and Gartner, they talk about this being a $1 trillion market. Now, some perspective on that. If B2B is a $1 trillion market, last year, according to the Department of Commerce, B2C, or online retailing, was $263 billion. So the sum game on that, as of right now, if you kind of believe these analysts' forecasts, B2B is 4 times the size of B2C e-commerce. So you can see how big B2B is in comparison to online retailing, which we, of course, write about kind of day in, day out. But what's the transaction volume for B2B? Kind of what's the true sales nature for B2B? What's the forecast for growth going to look like? We'll dig into that in years to come, but it's not here now. But having said that, I do like this slide from Forrester, which shows that if you kind of look at some of the procurement vendors that they track and what are their combined revenues, from what they sell to companies that take into account services, subscriptions, software licenses, that type of thing, you can see it's pretty big business. This year, $5.94 billion. Next year, $6.63 billion. That's going up. Compound annual growth rate, a little under 7%, 6.75. But what this shows you, though, is it's one metric that reinforces the fact that companies are thinking more and, frankly, spending more on B2B e-commerce. Now, when it comes to web procurement, one size does not fit all. In the online retailing world, retailers put up a very good-looking site and people come and shop it. You can do commerce via social media, and a lot more of these days you can do a lot more mobile. So there's frankly kind of one model that is online retailing as we know it. That is not the case when it comes to B2B e-commerce. Frankly, there is no one-size-fits-all. There are preferred methods, that some companies might use, which is just doing a straight B2B e-commerce transaction on a B2B e-commerce site. I'll talk about an example of that in just a second here. But for instance, commercial B2B e-commerce and automated platform networks are different from platform applications from folks such as Hybris, Insight, Oracle. Those are some of the leading platform providers. What do these commercial platforms allow you to do? Like with a standard e-commerce platform, they allow you to sell products, process transactions, post new content to product pages, link this to a content management system. You can put in place a catalog with site navigation, classify your products, also called taxonomy, and then also additional features and functions. In other words, that's what an e-commerce platform is and will done. But there's other models out there as well. One coming online here is a third-party network. What do those guys do? Third-party networks aren't for everybody. But having said that, a lot of big companies that place, billion-dollar orders, multi-million-dollar orders with select suppliers on very specific contract terms, and they process transactions and analyze data on an ongoing basis, those are third-party networks that are built to handle uniform but very specialized online procurement transactions such as negotiated pricing and discounts, new and repeat orders, if you will, processing and reconciling invoices, and creating custom reports. So there is a cornucopia of models that pertain to web procurement. Now, let's take a look in the next couple of slides at a few examples of what some of these models look like. The first is a straightforward B2B e-commerce site that we know very well. It's called restockit.com. At restockit.com, 75% of the company's annual web sales come from small business. And Restockit knows its customers very, very well, and that's from David Redlick, who is the co-founder and CEO down there. And what Restockit has done over time is they've built in more and more tools that make it easier for small businesses, that's who kind of their core B2B customer is, to frankly do a lot of replenishment. And why is that? Because frankly, small business customers, as probably many on our call today know, you folks wear a lot of hats. So over time, Restockit.com has spent a lot of time putting in place initiatives that keep their B2B customers coming back, and especially for more types of replenishment transactions. So as David tells us, we need to know in B2B who our customers are. And in the case of Restockit.com, these customers are janitorial and restaurant owners who want, recurring products to staff, their respective businesses. So in the last couple of years, this site, I think, is typical of the type of B2B commerce site who is serious about attracting an audience, serving the audience with tools that let them come to the site, straightforward, reorder what you need, and that's one less thing I have to do today as a small business owner. But Restockit kind of takes it one step further, which is they have spent a fair amount of time linking their customer loyalty program back to the new upgrades for replenishment they put on the site. So the fact of the matter is, 75% of their business is B2B. Much of that is replenishment, and that's because they've tied, better replenishment to customer loyalty with kind of a new customer loyalty program. And the average ticket is about 160, and that's in line with, who might come and buy from Restock It for the first time. But that 160 on a replenishment basis is pretty much who RestockIt.com is going after, and that's what kind of makes up the majority of their 23 million in total web sales from last year. Now we're talking about a different model that we featured in the guide to B2B commerce, and that is putting in place a procurement software application where I, the organization, can use this platform to go directly to the vendors and suppliers I want to. So a case in point here is Avalon Healthcare, and you can see by our bullets here, they have used this automated software platform to achieve some pretty significant ROI metrics. 1 million savings, 6,000 vendors, and they do that because with 330 people buying supplies across its 55 healthcare facilities, they need a better way to do business, and so after just 1 year alone, they realize savings of $1 million, and more importantly now, because they've got this automated, they can look at what their budgets are, they can see who in various departments is requesting a requisition, and they can price that accordingly, and price that all within the budget because this is web-based and automated. Next up is National Business Furniture. National Business Furniture, $100 million company. They've been doing e-commerce for many, many years now, and they've got several straightforward, very well-functioning, very advanced, straight B2B e-commerce sites on their own. The example is here. But lately, they have been increasing their presence on a third-party network, on the Ariba network, because they're reaching out to very high-end companies that want to buy a set of office furniture, but they want to do it for, let's say, a bank conglomerate that's got 1,500 locations across the country, their branches. They want to place one order. They want negotiated pricing. They want it standardized, and they want the order to kind of be the same because maybe they want the look of their manager chairs to be uniform across the board. So in this case, what they've been able to do is to link to, via this Ariba network, if you will, directly to those types of procurement managers, because that's how the procurement manager wants to do business from their perspective. And National Business Furniture recognized it needed to provide additional options for these kinds of big international companies that want to buy furniture this way, and they're accounting for this in giving them this option for those suppliers that prefer this type of automated purchasing process system. Now we're on to the manufacturer, Nike. So another iteration here is that manufacturers also will offer vendors, retailers, suppliers, distributors, wholesalers access to buy via the web directly from them. And a key example, an example that we point to here is Nike. So Nike.net is about a dozen years old, and it's a big operation. In fact, last year, Nike.net, which basically is used by its retailers to place orders, track orders, that type of thing, Nike.net did $5 billion in total transaction volume, or frankly B2B sales. A little perspective on that, Nike's growing pretty fast on the B2C side, but their business e-commerce side of the house is 6.5 times bigger than what they're doing in online retailing. So that yet again shows you you're talking big dollars here, but Nike is as equally committed to B2B as it is to B2C, and they have been retooling and updating Nike.net since we first wrote about this thing back in 2003. So what does this allow folks to do? Well, it allows them to place orders, track product changes, see what's new in terms of incentives from the manufacturers. So here's one more model that allows people to do kind of web-based procurement. And now we're on to our final part of the landscape here, which is EDI. So EDI is a fixed feature on the B2B landscape and will be for the foreseeable future. Simply put, EDI is the electronic interchange of business information, and it uses a standardized format. It allows to send uniform data, typically transaction, remittance advice, other types of things, to and from buyer and seller or trading partners via a third-party value-added network. EDI is old, decades old. A lot of it's still going around. You know, Forrester counts 20 billion transactions and still growing. And there are some that predicted 12 years ago, predict now that EDI will go the way of the 8-track player, you know, or the rotary dial phone. But the fact of the matter is it will not. EDI will still play a role in B2B commerce. And why is that? Because it's very well suited for doing a lot of reordering for industries like retailing. And a lot of companies have invested a lot of money and resources over time in building up their B2B networks and platforms. So in the near term, many companies will continue to connect their EDI systems with other forms of B2B commerce technology. So EDI is arguably the oldest and most established form of B2B networking, and for many companies, it will be dovetailed into a broader and multifaceted e-commerce program. So my final slide here is I leave you with some thoughts and some observations for some of the people that we talked to for the B2B guide, and it sums up why are you doing web-based procurement, B2B e-commerce. Here's what they have to say, but it was driven home to me by one of the folks I talked to, which is, you know what, in this day and age, it just makes good business sense. With that in mind, I turn the program over to Bob.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate the comments. Really great research here, and I just wanted to add a bit from some work that we've been doing with Forrester as well. As Don mentioned earlier in the call, my name is Bob Egner. I'm the Vice President of Product Management at Episerver. And one of the things that we had done earlier this year with Forrester is looked at companies that have been practicing B2B e-commerce for a number of years. And the results of the research, I've just put the summary slide up here, but the full report is available to you at the link that you see on the slide. Of the 100 companies that were surveyed in this group, the things that they're really reporting back to us is that B2B e-commerce just makes sense. Sort of the closing comment that Mark made, it just makes good business sense. If you look at the numbers here in terms of the survey group and what they report as the improvements they're getting in terms of increasing the overall top-line revenue, driving higher profitability per order, so the sort of bottom line benefit you get, lower cost per order, as well as increasing average order value. The numbers really just jump out at you, and it makes you think, well, we should probably take a look at this and how to move forward. And that's one of the things that Episerver is focused on, how we help companies move forward in their move towards e-commerce. Now, Episerver as a company focuses very much on helping organizations reach their customers in digital channels. We have a software solution that's helped thousands of customers build and operate tens of thousands of e-commerce and marketing websites that generate millions of dollars of sales. And we do that by keeping a strong focus on the customer experience. Now, the customer experience is something that we've seen in the discussion from Paul and Mark, has focused a lot on how consumers have learned behaviors online, what they expect to happen when they visit a website or when they use a mobile device, a tablet or a smartphone, to connect online, and that same expectation comes into what they expect when they get to work and what they would want these systems to work, how they would want them to work in a work environment. So many organizations tell us that just simply opening a new channel increases loyalty, increases the number of purchases, but we continue to find that those companies that are delivering great digital experiences are really reaching the goal that they want, that their customers want them to accomplish, which is make my life easy, make it easier for me to find the products I want, how I can purchase those products, how I can keep track of orders, successive orders over time. So we have about 40% of our business in the B2B space and 60% of it in the B2C space. We find that a lot of the lessons we learn in the B2C world, especially B2C retail and e-commerce, are spilling into the B2B world in the same way that Paul and Mark described. So just to get into that a little bit deeper, the connected consumers experience really focuses on a number of things that make their life easier. And you can see for yourself on the slides, there's a number of different facets to be thought about here of how you are able to interact in a mobile-friendly way. People who have smartphones, for example, just expect, as you might in your own life, that you're going to be able to find the information you're looking for quickly with just a few taps. You're going to be able to have that information presented quickly on whatever screen you happen to be holding, and it's going to be formatted and look great on that screen. Even though normally we get into these discussions about how much do B2B organizations need to focus on mobile, I think you saw in the material that Granger presented, there's a significant amount of traffic and a significant amount of business transactions that are moving that direction. The next area that's important is search. You can't buy what you can't find. So great search, quickly finding products with different terminologies, having synonyms and good matches for that is important, but then providing rich and relevant content for a particular visitor. They're always looking for information that you might experience in your own B2C e-commerce experiences, where you're looking for information. How does this product work? What should I expect from it? How would it actually operate in my situation? Who else is using this product and how did it work? Drives the need for ratings and reviews. Is there anything I'm missing? Any recommendations about people who bought this product also bought that product? And enriching everything here with video experience, with calculators that help you configure certain products are all the kind of clues that we get from the B2C world that are presenting themselves in the B2B world to make a great digital experience. Now, not the least of which, and we've learned this experience over and over again in the B2C world, is transparency on pricing, making it a very simple process, presenting the full price, including shipping, and that's something that in the B2B world especially, you can do a great job of because you've got full access to the identity of the visitor coming to the site. Typically, they have to log in to get favorable prices, contract negotiated prices for their organization to be able to purchase. And then lastly, this notion of self-service, trying to make it easy for that visitor to be able to manage the orders they've made themselves, to know the status of when it's going to ship, and presenting all the relevant information about inventory locations, delivery times, in a very self-service way. So you don't have to talk to people on the phone. You're just getting the information at your fingertips when and as you need it. Now, the experience that you deliver to your customers is certainly an important aspect of it, but there's a number of challenges that go into putting these systems in place, and that's one of the things that is an important area for us to focus on as well. We look at a set of technologies and how they work together because that's our business and what we do, but what we find is really important is that our customer organizations focus on the people who are operating these systems and the processes that they use, because many times those processes require people to change their work style or become engaged in a new way. There was some earlier material in this presentation that talked about keeping the sales organization engaged, which is a great example, a place where you can run into potential business issues if you don't address those up front. So most people that we talk to are looking for technology. It's sort of an easy thing to get your mind around, thinking about how to buy your way out of the problem that you have or get e-commerce in place, but it's really much broader than that. So you need to focus on the process and the personnel as well. What processes do you have in place? What other systems do you have in place? What training does your staff need, and how will you get them productive in a very short time frame? So there's a variety of technologies that also need to work together. And as we saw in Mark's presentation, there's real business value from just connecting those systems and being able to surface data that helps you make smarter business decisions and drive to better results online. Now, the EpiServer solution that we provide is something that focuses on 4 key areas, providing a very seamless experience from marketing to sales in any channel, from marketing and online sales through to customer care, the ability to support multi-channel and multi-regional activities to support business as you continue to grow in your region or around the world, and to provide service for specific customers and specific market segments. Solutions that can scale dynamically with your business and focus on delivering those experiences instead of just meeting some technical requirements. It's an interesting point from our survey, the data that we have from Forrester that you can read after the webinar today, that Forrester finds a lot of organizations get very quick results, shorter time to results by moving into cloud-based systems. And then lastly, responding to changes quickly in the market or technology changes, so you don't have to worry about what's the next big thing that's happening online. The system handles those things for you. You could think of it like the way that an app store works for an iPhone. You can add new capabilities without having to go out and buy a new phone every time something new comes up. All of our solutions are supported by a strong partner network, 760 partners that operate around the world, training and expert service to get your staff up to speed with the skills that they need to operate the systems. And then we take risk out of the process by having a large developer community with a certification process to make sure they can get systems in place for you quickly and effectively. So with that, I'll pass over to Don, and we'll move into the Q&A section of the webinar.
Okay, great. Thank you, Bob and Mark and Paul. We do have a few minutes for questions. You still time to ask questions. And remember that everybody will get an email with access to the slides in the next day or two. So let's go to the question. We actually have two questions from Richard in the audience, who's in clothing. His first question was whether apparel is suited for B2B e-commerce, and the second one is, which is related, is what categories seem best suited for B2B e-commerce. So let me take the first question about apparel, which I thought was interesting because the same question kind of arose when consumers started shopping online. At first, they bought things that they didn't really have need to see very much, like books. And then people started buying office supplies in large numbers. Again, you don't really need to touch or feel your printer paper. But in recent years, as websites have gotten more sophisticated, show better photography, different angles of items, let you drill down, show videos, give customer reviews, consumers have become more and more comfortable buying apparel online. In fact, in our most recent Top 500 guide, which ranks the top online retailers in North America, apparel sales grew 20%, and these top 500 retailers now account for 12.4% of apparel sales in the United States compared to 10.7% a year earlier. So it's definitely growing. And in the guide to B2B e-commerce, there are a couple of examples of B2B sellers that are selling apparel. For example, PAG Leisurewear, a British company that has a strong business online. And one of the things that they do with their website is that they provide basic information that you can get from a sales rep, but the customer can get by himself from a website, like how many items are in a case, and what is the percentage of cotton in a particular garment. So that's valuable information that the PAG can deliver through self-service. And just an example of how companies in the apparel industry are beginning to realize that they can do at least part of their selling via website. So we're very early into this. I mean, here at Internet Retailer, we don't consider ourselves the ultimate experts in B2B e-commerce. I think B2B e-commerce is just developing, and it probably isn't an ultimate expert. So we'll be digging more into this, and in 2015 we plan to bring out a more detailed guide with actual estimates of online sales for a variety of B2B wholesalers, distributors, and manufacturers. But let's move on to the second part of Richard's question. I'll ask people on our panel, are there any particular segments that you see that are seen particularly well suited for B2B e-commerce?
Well, this is Paul. I could answer that. I mean, somewhat. Certainly apparel, we're seeing more, whether it's manufacturers, distributors, as well as apparel marketplaces. There's a lot of, plenty of options to, buy and sell apparel in, through e-commerce. But we're also finding companies in all kinds of industries. We've been ones, like we were at a show. I was at a conference the other day. A unit of Boeing was pretty big into e-commerce, and it was more on the component level of things. But what we're finding is even the big industrial companies, maybe some of their products are obviously maybe too big to be bought and sold through e-commerce, because if they're very complicated, people want to still have that one-on-one with the sales reps. But they're still doing, or maybe some of the parts or even the service, some of that can be, through e-commerce, and sometimes that helps, to keep the, the engagement going there between the buyer and seller. So it seems like it can be pretty broad as for each category to find out, what works for them, what kind of products they can, and what kind of selling experiences they can offer value to their customers, and finding new customers at the same time, and also then getting people to buy more product lines per order, which you find a lot across different categories.
I'm going to take just a quick follow-up on Paul's answer too, which is what categories, what verticals, what industries are suitable for B2B, and where are you going to see it? I mean, the answer is what's happening across the board at organizations across vertical markets is one of the things that automation and B2B networking and e-commerce and the cloud allow you to do these days is to look at, analyze, control costs, and do direct networking with, with key trading partners. So, because there has been tremendous pressure on controlling costs since the Great Recession, and that kind of changed the dynamic for purchasing agents. So, as I said, at this point, I don't think there's going to be one size fits all for B2B commerce. So, I think a typical company might find itself dealing in the foreseeable future with 3 or 4 different models that pertain to how they do business, but the fact of the matter is, whether they're doing just one platform or maybe 2 or 3, they will still be doing more of this because this is how the marketplace is changing, our economy is changing, and this allows you to control costs. And when I ask folks, why are you doing it, that's what they tell me. We procure more online because it lets us kind of look at how we're spending, and we want to do a better job spending.
I'll just have one more example from Dow Corning that we wrote about recently, where they've moved the sale of their commodity products to an e-commerce site. The margins aren't big enough to justify having a sales rep sell them, but their newer products where the high margins are higher, those are still sold through the sales team. Let's move on to a question we have for Bob, which is, do you find that there are user experience and functionality challenges with designing responsibly for B2B e-commerce sites? That means designing so sites can be viewed easily on mobile devices, given the complexity of these B2B sites.
Yeah, I think the whole state of the industry in terms of making a better experience, making it easier to find information, continues to change, not just in B2B, but in B2C as well. I think the B2B situations present something that potentially is more complicated, but we normally look at this and we work with our customers in a way that's not just focused on responsive, but it's more focused on adaptive. Just a quick sidetrack on what the difference is between the two. Responsive is when you're reformatting content so it fits on a smaller screen. Adaptive is when you're actually surfacing different content based on information you might know about that visitor. So you might know the device they're using that has a small screen, and you would present different content there. For example, a video that's at a much faster frame rate so that you don't take up as much bandwidth to deliver it. Or you might have a situation where you're adapting the content based on the visitor and where they are in a particular journey. Maybe you know that this visitor has looked at 2 or 3 different products and they're trying to decide between a few of them. That gives you a great prompt to surface review or a recommendation that would help that individual make a decision and move forward in the process. So that's an adaptive approach as opposed to simply a responsive approach. Those are the types of things that the agency companies that we work with spend a lot of time with our clients to help them map out the user journey and the specific personas and use that as a baseline to design how that experience is supposed to work. I would say it's a different way of thinking now. I wouldn't really consider it to be a challenge in the process of getting B2B e-commerce in place, but it's certainly something that takes a lot of consideration to make sure you're delivering a great experience to your customers.
Okay, well, we're at the top of the hour, so we're going to wrap up this discussion. There are a few more questions in the queue. We'll try to get back to you offline on those. Thanks very much, Bob Egner from Episerver, and Paul Demery and Mark Rohan from Internet Retailer, and thank you all for attending. Have a great day.